So to start out with some SOL review questions, we've got equations, inequalities, and some systems working here in these first 3 pages on this review packet. So the first one wants to know which of these items can be a solution to the system. Remember that when you're looking for a solution, we're saying that if I plug that answer in, it's going to make a true statement. The left and the right will in fact be equal. And since this is talking about a system, remember that you have to plug the x and the y into both the top equation and the bottom equation there. You have to check it in both. So we'll go ahead then here with this item A and try that out. My x value 1, 4 times 1 minus 3 times the y value negative 2. I want to find out if that equals 10. So 4 times 1 is 4, negative 3 times negative 2 would be a positive 6. We're trying to find out, does that equal 10? Yes, 10 does equal 10. So that top equation works there. However, remember we said we have to try this in both, so we still have to go to the second. So my x value there is 1 plus 4 times the y value negative 2. Find out, does this equal negative 7? Well, 1, and then we've got a negative 8 equals negative 7. So negative 8, does that equal, whoops, I didn't do the subtraction there. 1 minus 8 makes the negative 7. And that equals negative 7, yes. So when it checks in both equations, then we know that is our solution. If you would go through and plug any of the other ones from B, C, or D in, they're not going to work in both equations. It might work in just the top or it might work in just the bottom, but there will be one of them that has a problem. So the next question that you're asked about there, number 2, which is an example of the commutative property. When I focus on commutative, I focus on that CO at the beginning. Remember that CO is talking about items that can change order. Okay, so you're looking for a problem where you have some kind of addition here that changed order, that swapped places. That is demonstrated best here in letter B. 7 was in the front with the 4m in the back of that addition, and then we swapped it 4m in the front with 7 in the back of that addition. Your number 3 question wants you to solve the following equation. So looking at that, I see this negative 1 sitting in front of the parentheses, so we're going to distribute that. Keep 3x the same, minus a 6, plus an x, this equals 18. And then we'll combine like terms, the 3x plus the x, that's going to make 4x minus 6 equals 18. Add your 6 to both sides, so 4x would equal 24. And when we divide by the 4 coefficient on each of those, that's going to give us x equals 6, which conveniently enough is the answer right next to where I was working. And the problem down below that for number 4, this one also wants me to solve the equation. So we're going to go ahead again with the distributive property. 5 times 2 makes 10x. 5 times negative 3 makes negative 15. This is equal to our 6x plus 9. I see that I have variables on both sides of the equals, so we have to get them all together. I'm going to pick one of them so that I can relocate it. It's already a positive 6x, so we'll do a minus 6x to each side. That gives me 4x minus 15 equals 9. We're going to have to add the 15 to each side to move it away from our variable. So 4x equals 24, and divide by that 4 coefficient on each one. This is coming up with x equals 6, and that answer choice then is all the way over here on the right side of that option. The number 5 question there wants to know about the slopes. We're looking for somebody here with a positive slope, so remember this is when you're going from left to right, it has to be going uphill. So that is in fact going to be this letter A graph that we have here. That is the positive slope. While we're at this, why don't we just go ahead and identify the slopes that we see in these other ones. Letter B here, from left to right as we go across the graph, is going downhill, so this is a negative slope. Remember that you can always identify negative slope. If you look at that capital letter N, the slope of that crossbar is actually a negative slope. Graph C here shows me this nice horizontal line. So that one has a 0 slope. And then the graph D that we've got all the way down here at the end, we're seeing a vertical line represented there. That vertical line has undefined slope. Those last two, the special cases, remember you might think about those acronyms HOI and VUX that we had talked about. So anytime that you see the horizontal line, you're thinking about the letter O, which is also the number 0 to give you that slope. Vertical lines, that letter U tells you undefined slope, so those acronyms can help you through. And then the last one on the page there wants the slope between these 2 points, the slope that you're going to have between these points. So remember, your slope formula here is where you're doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so taking my points, we're going to go ahead and plug them in. I'm doing a 3 minus a negative 1. Remember the minus sign from the formula and the negative sign from the point. This is divided by then, whoops, working out of order there. Okay. So we did 3 minus the negative 1. Then we're going to have to do the 3 minus the 4 there. To be consistent, whatever order I subtract in for the y's has to be the same order, same direction that I subtract in for the x's. So across the top then, that's going to give me a 4, and across the bottom I've got negative 1. So if I simplify that, I'm going to come up with a negative 4 response. That is the letter A on this page. So next up, we're going to be practicing more of those equation rules, but this time in the number 7, it's an inequality, but it still follows a lot of the same processes we know. We're going to distribute for a 4x minus 20 that's greater than 16. We have to add our 20 to both sides to help isolate the variable. So 4x then is greater than 36, and divide by our 4. Now in that last step, that's where you come up with that curiosity about, are you going to have to flip that inequality symbol? Are we dividing by a negative number? In this case, no, we are not. So that will stay the same. X is greater than 9, and if you're matching up, that comes down to the letter D all the way over here. So remember, you are only flipping that inequality when we multiply or divide by a negative. Alright, so question 8 wants to know the slope of the line. So remember, to find the slope of the line, it's always best to work in that y equals mx plus b format, because then your slope is your m value, that's whatever coefficient you have on x. So I can see here in number 8 that my y is not isolated, but we're going to do that. We're going to subtract the 5x from each side. So y equals then a negative 5x plus 3. And so looking for that m value that I have attached to x, now that my y is isolated, that's going to be a negative 5. So there's my slope here. It matches the letter B choice. On the number 9 there, we can see that we are given a slope and given a point, and we're asked to find the equation. There are 2 different formulas that you might use to do that. Some students like to set this up with the y equals mx plus b format. Some people like to set this up with the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 formula. Both of them are going to get you to the same place. This is a personal preference for what you like. I'll go ahead and work this problem out here with our y equals mx plus b version. So in that point, I'm given x and y coordinates. We're going to use those to plug in for the x and the y in the formula. Then I was also given this slope here as negative 2. So we'll fill all of that in, and b is the only thing that we don't know about. That's our job to find. So I'm going to multiply negative 1 here equals negative 2 plus b, and when we add that 2 to both sides, that'll give me a b value of positive 1. So you're looking for an equation here in your answer choices that has a slope of negative 2 and a b value of 1. When we put that all together, y equals negative 2x plus that positive 1, and that answer choice ends up being the match with letter C that we have down here. So then, in number 10, we're looking to solve this system of equations. Remember, there were 3 basic methods for solving. You could solve by graphing, you could solve by substitution, or you could solve by elimination. Most of those, any system of equation can be solved by any of those methods. I'm going to go ahead and do this one with substitution because I recognize that everything in this bottom equation is set equal to y. So I'll take all of that and replace the y that I have in my top equation. That looks like it'll be the least amount of work. So keeping my top equation the same, 2x minus 6 equals 2, but then I pull the y out and I replace it with what I know about y in that other equation. That's your 3 minus 2x. So we go ahead and solve. I need to distribute through the right side. That's a 6 minus 4x. We have to get all of these x's onto the same side, so I'll go ahead and choose to add 4x with this. 6x minus 6 equals 6. We're going to have to add that 6 to help cancel out and isolate the variable. 6x equals 12, and x equals 2. Remember, that's only half my answer. This is a system, so I'm looking for the ordered pair where these two lines cross on the graph. So we're going to have to take that and plug back into one of our equations. I'll go ahead and plug into the bottom one. 3 minus 2 times my new x value 2 is going to give me my y value. So I'm looking at 3 minus 4, and that, when I do the arithmetic, is a negative 1 for y. So looking for the x value 2, the y value negative 1, that all comes together here in option D. Part number 11 wants you to write the equation of the line given these 2 points. So given 2 points, I need to know what the slope between them is. So we're going to go ahead and find the slope. Again, that's doing the y minus y divided by x minus x equation. So in this case, that's 0 minus 2, and then negative 2 minus 0. So I'm looking at a negative 2 divided by a negative 2. 2 negatives when we divide comes out as a positive 1 for my slope. So looking through those answer choices right now, I can see that option A has a negative slope involved. That's not what we want. I can see that option C has a negative slope involved. That's not what we want. So we've already narrowed down our choices here. We just have to decide. The other issue here is the B value that I have. One of them shows me a positive B value, the other shows me a negative B value. Remember that B value is where the graph crosses the y-axis. My point 0, 2 shows me where I cross the x-axis. That's at a positive value. So we can identify that that option letter B should be the better answer for that. If you were given a point that was not the y-intercept, you would have to do a little bit more work for this. We got lucky on that one. But you can remember there was that other equation there. We had the y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1. I'll go ahead and use this one since I did the other formula previously. We're going to use one of these points here. Go ahead and stick with that one. And we'll use that to replace the x1 and the y1, leaving the x and y as my variables. We just found that slope to be a positive 1, and we're thinking x minus 0 here. You're going to be distributing through on the right side. So y minus 2, and when we distribute 1 times x, that's 1x. 1 times 0 is a 0. That's not going to make any difference for us. And you have to add that 2 to both sides. There you can see negative 2 and positive 2 cancel out. Look at that 1x plus 2 that we've got. That exactly matches what we just picked in the letter B. So number 12 there gives you a system of equations. In this word problem, we're told that we sell 69 skates and helmets. So when we put our skates and our helmets together, that's giving me a total of 69 items. Now, the other follow-up information that we've got is that we sold 27 more skates than helmets. So the number of skates that we sold is going to be whatever my helmet number is plus another 27 in order to make that difference. So we're going to go through and solve this system. I'm going to take this information here. Since all of my second equation is solved for s, I'll go ahead and make that replacement. Take s out of my top equation and rewrite that as the h plus 27, and then keep going with the rest of it plus h equals 69. Go ahead and combine like terms. 2h plus 27 equals 69. Subtract that 27 from each side, and that'll leave me with 2h equals 42. Divide by your coefficient, so your h value is 21. That's only half the answer, of course. We still have to find out about the skates. So go back to one of those original equations. Let's see, we had skates was helmets plus 27. So the number of skates is then 21 plus 27. Add those together, skates must be 48. And that matches up with the option A that we were presented with. We found the helmets first, even though it's listed second, but that doesn't make a difference for us. So number 13 here, factoring. Remember, factoring completely, so sometimes there could be more than one step to this. The first thing that you always look for is a greatest common factor. There is one here. We can divide 7 out of both of those terms. That would leave me with an x squared, and then 112 divided by 7 would leave me with 16. That's a negative 16 here. Notice that inside of those parentheses, x squared is a perfect square, 16 is a perfect square, that's a minus sign in between. That's going to clue you in that you need to do the difference of squares. So we will keep that 7 on the outside the same, but that special binomial pattern is going to split up. The x squared comes from x times x. The 16 at the end comes from 4 times 4, and to get that minus sign, I know I have to have 1 as a positive and 1 as a negative in the parentheses. The answer choice that ends up matching there is letter C. You can see that I did my plus and minus in the opposite order, but it doesn't matter. That's the commutative property for us. Number 14 wants us to go ahead and find an equivalent statement. Notice that these two polynomials are being added together, so this is merely a case for combining like terms. 3x squared doesn't have any matches, so he's going to stay just the same as he is. I've got this plain x and another plain x to add. That's a positive 4 plus a negative 5. That makes negative 1x. And then lastly, I have a positive 1 as a constant. I have a positive 2 as a constant. We're going to add those together, and that makes positive 3. Look at all of those together, and that would match up with letter C, because of course that negative 1 can be invisible. So here in number 15, we are looking to write an equation that would help us find the total cost. So looking at the important information, we've got the total cost in dollars, that's my variable C, is 4 times the price of a tire, T. So let's start with that part. Cost C means equals 4 times the price of a tire, 4 times that tire, plus a labor charge of $35, plus 35. And then look for which one of those answer choices matches it the best, and in this case, that's going to be the letter D. So, number 16 wants you to simplify the following. So we've got some good old radicals here, and it is multiplying them. So I'm going to go ahead. Anything underneath a radical can be multiplied with anything else underneath a radical. So 20 times 15 makes 300. X squared times x to the third, well, we can add those exponents together and make 5. Y to the third is the only thing that we have. And so my favorite method for simplifying radicals was to make the factor tree for it. So what can we split 300 up into? There's lots of different pairs that you might consider. I like 6 times 50. I know that 6 would be a 2 times a 3. 50 would be a 2 times a 25. And 25 would be a 5 times a 5. So I'm going to circle all of the prime numbers that I have. Since this is a square root, I know it has the index 2, so we are looking for pairs of 2. So I've got a pair of 2's, and I've got a pair of 5's. Every time I have a pair, that gets written outside. Anybody without a match, like that 3, gets to be written inside the radical. Remember, we also had variables to consider. Some of you had noticed the pattern about doing the division with them. Some of you were still a little bit more comfortable writing them out. Again, index of 2, so I need matches of 2. I've got 2 sets of x's that can pair up. Write those out. I've got a pair of y's that can be matched up. That gets written outside. The leftover x and the leftover y, they're going to have to stay inside the radical. And then we clean it up. Multiply anything together that's outside. 2 times 5 is 10. X times x is x squared with a y. And inside the radical, multiply anything that you can. That would stay the same in this case for the 3xy. Looking at all of those, that's going to match my answer choice C. Number 17, a little evaluation here. You're given values for A and B, and so we're going to try to plug those in. So my A value is 4, and then I'm going to do 3 minus this B value, negative 5. So let's see, 3 minus negative 5 makes me think 3 plus 5. So I'm going to be doing 4 times 8, and that gives me 32. Down below here on the next one, we've got an exponent question. In division, our job is to subtract the exponents, so we're looking at that 9 and 6. This is b to the third, match with letter choice B. The number, let's see, 19 there, wants me to factor. I see that there is no greatest common factor among these, so I can skip that step. I do have a leading coefficient, so I'm going to multiply those together to find my key number. So I am thinking about 3 times 6, that gives me 18, and I make the list for everything I can multiply together to make 18. 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. I know that I have to be able to subtract these from each other to make a 7. So that's the 2 and the 9. And then I start thinking about my signs for that subtraction. They've got to be opposite signs. Is it a plus 2 with a minus 9? Or is it a minus 2 with a plus 9 to make sure that I have a positive 7 in the middle? And that's going to have to be the second choice to make that the positive. Now, we go ahead, keep that first term exactly the same as it is, keep that last term exactly the same as it is. You use your choice to rewrite that middle term. That's a negative 2x with a plus 9x. And then we go ahead and we start grouping it up. The first pair together has a common factor of x. Divide that out, leaves us with 3x minus 2. The second pair in here has a common factor of 3. Divide that out. I've got a 3x and a negative 2 left behind. So when you see the matchy-matchy parentheses, one set of my answer is going to be the match 3x minus 2. The second set of my answer is the GCFs that I pulled, the leftovers, the x plus 3. The question here only asked for which one of them is a match, and it turns out that it's this 3x minus 2 part that shows up as a choice. The next question here, number 20, wants to know about it being a function. Remember that when we focus on a function, we're looking for the x values that don't repeat. So when I look at option A, I can see that I have an x2 and an x2. That's repeating. That's not going to work. B has a negative 2, positive 2, 3, and 1. That looks pretty good. Let's check out the other ones just to make sure there's not a better choice. C, I have an x value 2 and an x value 2. That doesn't work. D shows me x value 1 and x value 1. That doesn't work, so B is indeed the best choice. We're then asked for a 0 of the following here, and if you recall a 0, this is asking you about when the y value is equal to 0. In this case, we don't have a y, we have an f of x. Remember, y and f of x are interchangeable, so this is actually wanting you to replace that. X squared plus 3x minus 4. So this is a quadratic with that x squared x in plane number pattern. This is where we're going to factor it into two binomials. So x squared comes from an x times an x. And for my 4, I'm going to choose the pattern with a 1 times a 4, make that a positive 4, make that a negative 1. And then your zero product property says that I'm going to have to consider what if the first factor was equal to 0, add 1 to each side, I'd get a positive 1. Or take my second factor, set it equal to 0. Subtract the 4 from each side, x could be negative 4. So both of these would be the zeros to this function. They would both be solutions to it. We're only looking for one of them that presents itself. That's letter A. 22 here wants the range of this function, and we are given a domain with 3 values in it. So we're going to work out this same problem 3 times. We're going to do the f of 2 value, and that's just saying let's take the x out and replace it with 2. 1/2 times 2 plus 5. Well, 1/2 times 2 is 1 plus 5 makes 6. Second problem, let's work with that x value 4. So f of 4, we're now thinking 1/2 times 4 plus 5. 1/2 times 4 is 2, plus 5 makes 7. And third problem, do the function value evaluated at 6. And if I plug that in, this is a 1/2 times a 6 plus 5. 1/2 times 6 is 3, plus 5 makes 8. The answer choice that has the 6, the 7, and the 8 in it as the complete range. There it is, letter B. And then the last item, you're given this ordered pair x comma 2. Remember, this is the version of saying x comma y. We're told that this is a solution to the equation, so find out what x is. You are already given the y value, so we're going to go ahead and use that. 2x minus 4 times my y value 2 equals 12. Look, there's only one variable in it now. Go ahead and solve for x. 2x minus 8 equals 12. We're going to add our 8 to each side, so 2x equals 20. Divide both sides by the 2 coefficient, and x equals 10. That happens to match the answer choice, letter D. I hope that this brought a lot of great ideas back into your head and that you're having a lot of luck with this studying.